This thing on? Make sure everything's working still. Testing. All right. Yeah, I think it's all working. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back from an unfortunately longer than expected summer break. Not that I was expecting to have any kind of summer break on the channel, and that is kind of what I want to say first here is just a thank you to everybody who's stuck with me through a much lighter summer on videos than I was expecting to have, due to a combination of maybe biting off more than I can chew as far as what I had planned, but also being more busy, surprise, the kid taking more and more attention the older he gets, and then an unexpected bout with COVID that had my voice on the fritz for over a month and made recording, well, pretty much impossible. Unless you wanted to hear my voice crack constantly, which probably would have been funny to you, but I'm a little bit too much of a perfectionist to actually put that out onto the internet. I don't know. Regardless, though, we are finally back, and not a moment too soon, as both training camp and the preseason start here in the next week, and the season itself is less than a month away. So there's no time to lose. I mean, even with, as most off-seasons are, being pretty light on news in the Kraken front ever since free agency, there still has been stuff that's built up over that time. Not to mention the fact that when we did that free agency video, I mentioned that we would save the Bjorkstrand trade for the next one. Unfortunately, I came down with COVID shortly after that, so we're going to talk about Bjorkstrand now, well over a month since that trade happened. Getting close to 2 months. Actually, probably is 2 months. Maybe even over 2 months? I don't know. It's been a while. Now, of course, I know, by now you probably know everything there is to know about the trade that brought Bjorkstrand to Seattle from the Columbus Blue Jackets, as once again it happened quite a while ago, and people are excited to see him skate around for the Kraken this season. In number 22, it looks like. That's a little bit more recent news, but looks like he's picked Appleton's old number. Which, yeah, I guess we now have old numbers from players that used to play for the team. Anyway, real quick, at least as a refresher if you don't remember, the trade was Seattle, of course, getting Bjorkstrand, in exchange giving the Blue Jackets a 2023 third and fourth round pick. That third round pick originally the Calgary Flames, and the fourth one originally belonging to the Winnipeg Jets. So if the projections for this season turn out, those both would be lower than the Kraken third and fourth picks, although I think there's maybe a chance the Kraken can surpass the Jets if they have a really good season and the Jets continue to underperform like they tend to do. But at least the Flames pick, I think it's somewhat safe to say that one will be lower in that third round than the Kraken one, for whatever difference that makes. And to be honest, it makes little difference which third and fourth round picks the Kraken gave up when it comes to who won this trade, which, at least to me, is clearly the Kraken. Getting a player like Bjorkstrand for just a low third and fourth round pick, more than likely, is a very good deal for Seattle. Now, sure, you could argue that the Blue Jackets did also get cap space, clearing up the $5.4 million over the next 4 years, as we'll say again later that Bjorkstrand still has left on his contract, and they did make a couple of big signings, extending Laine, and of course making the premier signing of the free agency period, somehow picking up Johnny Gaudreau. However, they didn't really need to make that extra space if it hadn't been for the also signing in free agency of Erik Goodbranson, who they signed for 4 years, $4 million. Not that far off from the exact amount that Bjorkstrand will now have with the Kraken. Also a fact that Blue Jackets fans were all too happy to point out at the time of the trade, and many, if not most, are still salty about to this point in time, as Bjorkstrand was very much a fan favorite back in Columbus, and will probably turn out to be the same here in Seattle. Much like Yanni Gourde was for Tampa Bay and has been here. But other than another potential fan favorite player, what else are the Kraken getting in Bjorkstrand? Well, he's a 27-year-old right-shotted winger who was taken in the third round by the Columbus Blue Jackets of the 2013 draft, and since then has played in at least part of 7 different NHL seasons after making his debut in the 2015-16 season, in those 7 years playing 382 games, in which he has 234 points on 111 goals and 123 assists. So pretty respectable points production for a middle of the lineup type of guy, even if he ends up spending a lot of time on the first line for the Kraken, which is definitely a possibility. But he also, of course, as has been the case with most of the guys the Kraken have picked up in this offseason, has some pretty good advanced stats, never being below 50% in the Corsi forward percentage, and a career 55.5 there, so actually well above that 50% line for most of his career, and pretty good expected plus minus over the course of his career, even if the last 2 years have, well, maybe not been the best. Regardless, though, he does tend to be pretty good with the puck, or at least gets more takeaways for his team than giveaways on a consistent basis, and significantly more at that. And also this last season showed that he's not afraid to throw his body around with 85 hits in 80 games played. And it's also encouraging to see that in each of the last 2 seasons, he's set new career highs in points, with 44 points 2 years ago, and then 57 points in this last season, where he also set a career high for both goals and tied a career high for assists, with 28 goals and 29 assists. Again, those 28 goals being higher than anybody on the Kraken. Though, admittedly, just barely edging out McCann there, who had 27 goals for Seattle. Although, again, that assist total of 29 is also higher than anybody on the Kraken, just edging out Dunn there, who led the way for Seattle with 28. And of course, his 57 points, also higher than McCann leading the Kraken with 50. So, yeah, it's all higher than anybody on the Kraken had last year. But maybe most importantly for the Kraken is the fact that over the last few years, he's been getting more and more time on the power play in Columbus. Something that, again, Seattle could definitely use some help with in this season if they're going to do any better than last year, where their power play and penalty kill, but power play especially, was downright terrible. And especially in this last year, Bjorkstrand did pretty well there, with 19 points on 9 goals and 10 assists on the power play. And oh, by the way, yes, both those numbers for Bjorkstrand, the 9 power play goals and 10 power play assists, are both higher than anybody on the Kraken had all of last season, in either category, where Jared McCann did lead both with 8 power play goals and was tied Vince Dunn with 9 power play assists. Of course, I guess maybe it's also worth mentioning that Matty Beniers did also have 4 points on the power play last season, on 2 goals and 2 assists in just the 10 NHL games he played. So if you project that over an entire season of 82 games, then yeah, he would have safely more than anybody else on the Kraken, or of course also Bjorkstrand here. Finally then, as for where Bjorkstrand likely fits into the Kraken lineup, other than clearly on probably the first power play unit, if not the second one, I think even though we probably again will see some mixing and matching early on in the season, though that being said, I would like to see the Kraken get to a little bit more of a regular lineup before, I don't know, let's just say January, and maybe that'll help some consistent faces lead to a little bit more consistent success for the team. But regardless, as far as Bjorkstrand is concerned, with Eberle likely fitting the right wing role on the first line, I think that Bjorkstrand probably fits that role on the second line. As far as who the left winger and center on that second line are, again, we'll probably just save that for another video. Now, moving on, ever since the free agency period and that Bjorkstrand trade, again, it's been somewhat quiet on the news front for the Kraken, but there has been some things going on, so to get fully caught up, as with any offseason, there's been some moving around in the front office with scouting staff, analytics staff, stuff like that, including the addition of a new assistant head coach in Dave Lowry, who has spent some time at the NHL level in that role, both with the LA Kings and Calgary Flames, as well as some with the Winnipeg Jets, though he spent most of last season for the Jets as the interim head coach, in that time getting a record of 26, 22, and 6, while also coaching his son who played for the team, which was kind of a fun story, so I guess it's a bit of a bummer that that's coming to an end. But either way, Lowry, with his experience, does join the Kraken staff, and hopefully can improve things there. I mean, I guess if you really think about it, he's already helped out the Kraken significantly. Again, coaching that Winnipeg Jets team to a comeback win over Seattle in the final game of the season, which helped the Kraken get that 4th overall pick by being the 3rd in the draft lottery, where they ended up getting Shane Wright in the actual draft. And if they had won that game, dropped to the 5th overall pick, the Flyers probably would have taken Shane Wright, and things would look a lot different for the Kraken going into the future. Still though, only time will tell for both how Lowry fares as an assistant coach for the Kraken, and also how Shane Wright fares as a Kraken player. Staying on the subject of movement within the Kraken organization from a staffing standpoint, The Kraken have also hired a new third assistant general manager, or I guess their first third assistant general manager, as they only had 2 last season. But either way, Alex Mandrycky joins the assistant general manager staff and also becomes one of a growing number of women fitting that role across the NHL. Though, if memory serves, I think she's the first woman filling that role as more of an analytical, stats-driven type of assistant general manager. It's certainly a significant hire for the Kraken, no matter what. Not only to keep Mandrycky in the Kraken organization instead of losing her to potentially getting hired to that role for another team over the course of the season, like what happened to the Canucks last year, but also because it continues to emphasize that the Kraken are definitely a forward-thinking organization when it comes to who they're hiring for their staff, and also the fact that they're continuing to emphasize the importance of analytics and a stats-driven mentality as an important role in how this team is built, not only for the current, but also building into the future. Probably the most impactful staff hiring that the Kraken made this offseason, though, or at least most impactful from a fan standpoint and how fans watch and consume Kraken content, and not actually anything to do with how the team performs on the ice, but it would be the hiring of Eddie Olczyk, who joins the booth team for broadcasting games. Olczyk is another one of the more well-known commentators across the NHL, and he comes over from years spent in Chicago with the Blackhawks. Now, it's worth mentioning that, like John Forsland last season and continuing on, he too is also a part of national broadcasts. So if, again, like with Forsland last year, there's a conflict with a national broadcast that he's a part of in a Kraken game, he's going to choose the national broadcast. But that didn't happen a ton of games last year with Forsland, and now with 2 guys, the likelihood that both have to miss for a national broadcast isn't super high. And again, with JT Brown still there and a number of other people involved in the Kraken broadcast that can fill that role, like we saw some of them do last year all too well. Again, basically, us Kraken fans are going to continue to be spoiled into the foreseeable future when it comes to the broadcast team that does the games that we watch or listen to on the radio. Regardless of how you consume games, we're pretty much spoiled with the broadcast teams that we get to watch or listen to. And finally, again, over the last couple of months, we have gotten a couple of pieces of news on the farm system front. Of course, as we know, the Kraken do actually have their own AHL affiliate, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who not only have a new stadium they're going to be playing in, or I guess new arena, stadium, anyway, whatever you want to call it, they also have a new mascot. Somehow getting their mascot before the Kraken get theirs, but again, like I think I've mentioned before, I'm pretty sure the Kraken have had a mascot ready to announce for almost 6 months, if not longer by now, but just kind of decided that with COVID restrictions and all that, it wasn't worth announcing a mascot that they couldn't really have interact with fans, so they just saved it for this season, and it will probably happen pretty early on in the year, maybe even that first home game, or at least first home stand. Either way, the Firebirds do officially get their mascot first, Fuego the Firebird, which some people have said looks like a chicken, but either way, I mean, it's a mascot. Of course, he's going to look cartoony and he's a bird, so, I mean, what are you going to do? And at least personally, I don't see the whole chicken thing. To me, he's absolute fire. Get it? Fuego, fire? Eh. Aside from Fuego and the Firebirds and all the news going on there, the Kraken do also have one other piece of farm system news, and that is that they have added an ECHL affiliate, the KC Mavericks, which, in case you were wondering and aren't familiar with this system, no, it doesn't mean that the Kraken just get all of the Mavericks players into their system. It just means that they can send players to the Mavericks as an official affiliate. Either way, it also means that if you live in Kansas City or nearby, or I guess near any ECHL team that plays the Mavericks, you can potentially watch some Kraken prospects play for the Mavericks this year. Anyway, I do think that just about does it for this one. So if I missed any big pieces of news, at least bigger than like Grubauer throwing out a first pitch or Yanni Gourde having a baby, that's actually pretty big news. Speaking of which, I don't know how hockey players play professional NHL hockey and be a new dad, but regardless, both things seem very exhausting. That should do it for this one. If I missed anything, let me know about it down in the comment section. Oh, Jared McCann also switched numbers. He's number 19 now, so if you have a McCann 16 jersey, well, there you go. It's a replica. Plus, it also is a jersey now that doesn't have an ad on it, which It's nice to have jerseys that don't have ads on them. Regardless, anyway, kind of rambling here at the end, a little out of practice. Again, feel free to let me know about anything that was missed down in the comment section. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.